it's JPR and welcome back to another video. Opinions of Pokemon games vary pretty wildly, and it's hard to ever find a true consensus for most of them. But if you ask most Pokemon fans what they think the best Pokemon games are, the most common responses you'd hear are Emerald, Platinum, the Gen 5 games, Legends Arceus, and maybe Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But there's one duo of games that I feel like is constantly slept on by the entire community, ones that deserve to be in that all-important conversation. Likely the last ever enhanced version games, Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. But before that, let's hear from the sponsor of today's video, Honkai Star Rail. That's right, the makers of Genshin Impact are back with their new space fantasy RPG that can be played for free cross-platform across PC, mobile, and now PS5. All without losing a single trace of your precious save data. The new 1.4 update coming out includes the new Belobog story and more than 20 charming playable characters. And speaking of characters, why not try out some of the new limited time 5-star heroes? First is Jingliu, a powerful ice/destruction DPS character who can both transform and attack with a sword. And the second are the duo of Topaz and Numby. Topaz is a cheerful young girl who teams up with a reliable pet Numby to do massive fire damage to a single target. Both of these characters are must-haves for any players new or old, so make sure you don't miss your window to draw for them. Included within the Belobog story are two new maps as well, the Pillar of Creation and the Old Weapon Testing Ground. The Ethereum Wars are also set to kick off, where you can use your favorite monster against other monsters in combat. And if you log in for 7 days straight during this period, you'll get 10 free Star Rail Special Passes, which can be used to draw Jingliu or Topaz. Download the game now using my link down below and the redemption code for 50 Stellar Jades. Thank you Honkai Star Rail for sponsoring, let's get back to it. Now, to get the full story on why these games are so divisive, we have to go back in time to early 2017. Pokemon was coming hot off the heels of one of their best years ever, if not the best year ever in terms of how many big projects were pushed out. The Nintendo Switch was this brand new piece of hardware filled with limitless potential, or so we believed. And after skipping enhanced versions for the first time ever in Gen 6, people were eager to see what Gen 7 held for the future. Would we get sequels much like in Gen 5 with a whole new cast of characters and Pokemon? Would we be getting our very first DLC? Or maybe the enhanced version will end up being on the Nintendo Switch to help Pokemon make the jump from handheld to home console. And, well, as a wise man once said, reality is often disappointing. And none of these things would happen, as it was revealed that we'd be getting not one, but 2 enhanced versions of Pokemon Sun and Moon, and they would remain on the 3DS console. Talk about a serious gut punch. First of all, how are you going to call these the definitive version of Alola if there's still different versions of them? Definitive implies the existence of one. And for what reason would you split them up? Because if the sun was up in the sky at the proper time, you'd be sliding Pokemon Moon fans? I'd like to say I'm kidding, but aside from that, there's no reason to split these games into 2 versions. If anything, just have a choice be made during the story like in Legends Arceus, where you choose which legendary you catch and which one Necrozma possesses. That wouldn't have been so hard. But yeah, if I said there was very little hype leading up to the release of these games, I would be lying. There actually was none at all. Especially since Alola was already notorious for having far too much dialogue and too many tutorials to slog through. Asking people to repeat that same cumbersome process only 364 days after the original release isn't exactly gonna get people to jump for joy. This may have been the most loathed release of all time, and that's saying something because Let's Go Pikachu came out the next year. And then Sword and Shield after that. Needless to say, most people either didn't buy it or got so bored in the first 3 hours of the game that they just didn't finish it. Believe me, I know these people, they're my entire friend group. But going back and replaying these games recently, I have to say, tutorials and dialogue aside, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are an absolute blast to revisit. Let me just say, team building wise, I don't think there's a single game that outdoes these. These games have a massive dex of 400 Pokemon, and unlike other games with large dexes like X and Y or Scarlet and Violet, very little of it feels like filler. Almost every Pokemon in this dex, except Ladybug and Ledion, feels meticulously chosen. I felt like Alola already had a very good dex in base Sun and Moon, but the 100 Pokemon they add here are so ridiculously good. Zoroark, Hawlucha, Heracross, Tropius, okay, not everything is amazing, but most of the new additions here are fantastic. Heck, you can actually catch all 18 types of Pokemon on the first island alone. That has to be a record of some kind. And everyone always says, wow, I wish there was a game where you could catch starter Pokemon in the wild. That would be so cool. Hello, they're right here. The island scan feature from Gen 7 may be one of the most underrated and unjustly forgotten features we've ever gotten. Just scanning a few of these QR codes will allow you to spawn a rare Pokemon on all 4 of the islands. And these Pokemon change every day of the week. So realistically, there's like 50 extra Pokemon added to the dex, and almost all of them are bangers. You have all of the Kanto starters on Melee Island, all of the Hoenn ones on Akala Island. all of Sinnoh on Ula Ula, and all of Kalos on Pony, and like not even post-game Pony Island. You can literally get a Greninja without transferring before your last handful of trials. Here's what my team looked like after I just set foot on the third island about halfway through the game. You can't lie to me, this is some gas. And you may think, wow, these Pokemon sound extremely good, JPR, I bet these games are really easy. Think again, Jethro. Without EXP share turned on, oh yeah, these are the last games you're actually able to do that. These are widely agreed upon to be some of the hardest games in the series. And specifically, if you're Nuzlocking these games, I think they are the hardest. Just because of how insane some of the totem fights can be. And if you want to test your luck, you can battle the Route Kahunas. Almost every area in the game has them, and beating them usually gives you an extremely useful item. The risk? Well, all of them carry Z moves and some tricky teams as well. So it's not always smooth sailing. In fact, these route bosses, along with basically any other significant trainers in the game, are all EV trained for that little extra dose of, oh god, why did I just endanger this entire run for a focus sash? They're completely optional, but sometimes you might really need that item for your next totem fight. And I enjoy that risk versus reward factor quite a bit. This is one of the very few Pokemon games where I feel like the options the player are presented with are balanced perfectly with how challenging the game is. Most Pokemon games have this severe difficulty imbalance, where you have all of these amazing tools and the NPCs have none of them. Or in some cases, like Gen 2, you have none of the tools that build a good team, and they have 3 underleveled Dragonites, and a Scyther at the second gym, and a Miltank at the third gym. See, that's not very fair either. I love how this game gives you the ability to make your team way more cracked than it has any right to be, but at the same time, you need it to be cracked if you're going to survive. Some people say it's just Ultra Necrozma and this one battle doesn't make the game hard, but I disagree. There are some consistent threats throughout the game to keep you on your toes. But hey, challenges and team building aside, I also believe that these are some of the most well fleshed out Pokemon games. A lot of people claim that Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon added far less content than any other enhanced version, and I can understand why that's a popular take, but I don't believe it to be the correct take. If you're just blitzing the main story and doing nothing else, then yeah, you'd probably see nothing new aside from the alterations made to the story at the very end of the game. But if you actually take the time to backtrack through the early portions of the game and explore what every area has to offer, you'll find that almost every location has some sort of hidden side quest or event for you to partake in. Like, how many people actually experience the Haunted Trainer School quest? Not many, I'm willing to bet. Like seriously, why do these games have more properly fleshed out side quests than Scarlet and Violet? According to Sarah B, there are 35 of these side events in total. Some of them are actual quests that involve battling through multiple trainers, some give you exclusive items or Z crystals, and some are just funny little cutscenes which are appropriate for Alola's more laid-back tone. I think these add a lot of charm and depth to the Alola region experience, and they are criminally underappreciated. My only complaint is that one side quest involving the Alolan Vulpix that doesn't result in you actually catching it. That felt like a true Ash Ketchum-styled catch that they were setting up, and it just resulted in, hey, you can pet the Vulpix on Mount Lanakila now. Yay. Now, on the previous topic of story, okay, yeah, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon story is, kind of a mess. It takes Sun and Moon's story, which is actually quite good by Pokemon standards, and attempts to change the entire endgame along with characters like Lucamine's entire motivations. And it's not exactly pieced together as well as it could have been. Lily gets some pretty integral character building scenes removed for seemingly no reason. Lucamine is no longer insane or wants to travel to alternate dimensions to be with her aliens, but instead seeks to help the Ultra Recon Squad by defeating Necrozma. And on the surface, I don't hate this change. Chalking up Lucamine's crazy motivation to her insanity in Sun and Moon was definitely a shortcoming, and I think making her into a well-intentioned but extremist philanthropist is a good change to make her a more compelling character. The problem is, this is done while still keeping much of the dialogue and scenes identical to Sun and Moon. So she still comes off as kind of crazy, and with all of her backstory with Mon, Lily, and Gladion being skimmed over way too nonchalantly. These were points that I was hoping these games would build upon, not just ignore them and make up for it with a cheeky post-credit scene where Mon inexplicably returns to the Aether Paradise. I don't know, I acknowledge that they tried to make Lucamine more interesting and realistically flawed this time around, but the framing of the story staying mostly the same as Sun and Moon just creates more inconsistencies in her character than anything. And again, Lily and Gladion feel only half as developed this time around with these changes being made. They did make up for it with Hao taking a one-note happy-go-lucky rival from the originals and fleshing him out into a stronger character who wants to be relied on. This time, when Team Skull kidnaps Lily, Hao actually takes Gladion's words to heart and tries to better himself as a more independent trainer, rather than just shrugging it off and saying, "Oh well guys, we'll get him next time." They took a character who I really didn't care for and gave him an arc. Do I think it fully makes up for what happened to the Aether family? No, but it's at least an improvement made in one department. And getting back to other improvements, there are some significant upgrades made towards the end of the game. Pony Island always felt like an afterthought in Sun and Moon, and it felt like the pacing accelerated dramatically in the originals just because there wasn't much to do post-Lucamine summoning the Ultra Beast. Aside from Vast Pony Canyon, Pony Island was very barren. There's not even a trial for Hapu or Mina, Ultra Space is a literal hallway after being hyped up for more than half the game, and Victory Road is... oh wait, I just got through it before I could even finish the sentence, whoops! Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, on the other hand, address all of these problems. And it feels like the game actually has a proper amount of time to wrap up instead of just ending like it did in the originals. They even went out of their way to fix how late Pokemon like Crabrawler and Charjabug evolved by adding some extra areas for them on the third island, which shouldn't go unappreciated. Now, admittedly, some stuff like Ultra Megalopolis and some of the Ultra Beast dimensions are a bit shallower than I would have preferred. But hey, still an upgrade from the originals regardless. Unfortunately, they did come at the expense of the Looker and Annabelle missions, which means they are literally just here for no reason this time around. But hey, I think the Rainbow Rocket episode is a fair enough trade-off for that. This is still one of the sickest storylines in a Pokemon game, if you ask me. And I'm so glad they decided to fully dive into their own multiverse of madness with all the Ultra Wormhole stuff. I thought Sun and Moon introduced too many cool concepts only for them to play it way too safe with how they were actually used. No such thing happens here. Do the games still have their fair share of flaws? Yes, every Pokemon game does. And yeah, that includes your favorite, you don't need to ask. The beginning of the game is still dreadfully slow. Like, no, I do not need a required tutorial to use the Alola Photo Club or the Pokefinder for the second game in a row. Thanks for the concern, though. The only tutorial I can forgive existing is Mantine Surfing, but only because Mantine Surfing is a super sick feature and actually gives us a fun option to travel between islands. The story isn't as well put together this time around in my opinion, and some areas do still leave a lot to be desired. But by and large, I feel like almost no Pokemon games have the same level of depth as these ones do. Especially anything recent. Alola's got more charm and life to it in one city than Paldea has in its entire region. And despite everyone's initial disappointment with these games existing, I think they hold up remarkably well. And as time goes on, I'm fairly certain these will be some of the best aging Pokemon games. If you haven't already, I think you should give these games a fair shot. You might just find something special along the way. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and a quick shout out to my newest channel member, Ryan Rodert. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you guys next time.